Welcome to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. I'm your host, Molly Watts. If you want to change your drinking habits and create a peaceful relationship with alcohol, you're in the right place. This podcast explores the strategies I use to overcome a lifetime of family alcohol abuse, more than 30 years of anxiety and worry about my own drinking, and what felt like an unbreakable daily drinking habit. Becoming an alcohol minimalist means removing excess alcohol from your life so it doesn't remove you from life. It means being able to take alcohol or leave it without feeling deprived. It means to live peacefully, being able to enjoy a glass of wine without feeling guilty and without needing to finish the bottle. With science on our side, we'll shatter your past patterns and eliminate your excuses. Changing your relationship with alcohol is possible. I'm here to help you do it. Let's start now. Well, hello and welcome or welcome back to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast with me, your host, Molly Watts, coming to you from, it is sheer perfection today in Oregon. You know, we had some rain over this week, but it was actually kind of nice. I'm getting into that fall vibe. But these days, these perfect fall days, I love the light that is around in October, and the mornings start off a little bit cool, and we're going to top out around 71 degrees today. The colors are just spectacular. The leaves are changing, and it's just sheer perfection in Oregon today. How are you doing? It is, if you're listening to this in real time, this episode is dropping on October 5th. If you're doing More Sober October, I hope it's going really well. We had a great free group coaching session this past Saturday for people that are signed up for More Sober October with me, and it was just awesome. And I hope, like I said, you still got lots of time, right? We got 25 more days of October. No matter how it's started, there is still room and the opportunity to make More Sober October successful for you. And it doesn't have to be all about the number of days, although we try to increase the number of alcohol-free days that we're doing in the Alcohol Minimalist group. But regardless, you've got lots of ways that you can be a success during More Sober October, and I'm cheering you on. I'm rooting for you. So today I'm going to go back to this kind of theme that I talked about for More Sober October, and that is this global kind of idea of who are you without the drink. And last week we talked about the stories and the labels we use to define ourselves when it comes to alcohol, like the party girl or mommy wine culture or a social drinker even. And we explored how those labels become part of our default identities. And they shape not just how we see ourselves, but how we act and the choices that we make. And those narratives live deep in the brain's automatic system. They drive our habits because they tell the brain kind of what to expect and how to respond even before we consciously decide. Today, we're going to go deeper into what's happening behind those automatic stories, and we're exploring the idea that you're not just one version of yourself. You're actually two. There's the default you who acts on habit and impulse, and then there's the intentional you, and that's the person who wants to change. And if you've ever felt like those two selves are in conflict, you are certainly not alone and you are not imagining it. That tug of war isn't psychological weakness, it's neuroscience. It is because your brain has two different systems running the show, and those systems don't always agree. So today we're going to unpack what's happening in the brain when your automatic self and your intentional self compete, how that competition affects your drinking decisions, and how you can start training your brain so that the other you who doesn't drink isn't just a possibility, but she or he becomes your new default, your new normal. So if you've ever heard about the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. It's, I think I've heard it described as a sentinel book before. It's just one of these books it's very hard. It's a very big book, long book, it's very technical, but it is so, Daniel Kahneman won a Nobel Prize. He's very, very important in the world of neuroscience. And he came up with this idea of that there are two systems of thought. And Kahneman called them System 1 and System 2. And System 1 is fast, intuitive, emotional, and automatic. It's what helps you drive a familiar route without even thinking about it. It recognizes a friend's face instantly, or you can finish a common phrase like peanut butter and jelly. System 2, on the other hand, is slower. It's more deliberate. It's logical and reflective. It's the system that you use when you are solving a problem, when you're resisting temptation, or when you're making plans for the future. And both systems are necessary. System 1 keeps you efficient. System 2 keeps you intentional. And if you've heard me talk about these parts of the brain before, this would be that System 1 is that lower, more primitive brain, right? And System 2 is in the logical prefrontal cortex. So I talk about a higher brain, a lower brain. Daniel Kahneman described it as System 1 and System 2. System 1 is typically the default. That fast, intuitive, automatic, kind of emotional, primitive response, your brain prefers it because it conserves energy. Thinking slowly takes effort, it takes focus, and glucose quite literally, right? Fuel. And when it comes to drinking habits, System 1, that, default system, runs the show most of the time. That 5 p.m. typical craving and the automatic yes at happy hour or when you walk in the door after work, those are all System 1 processes. They're quick, they're learned, they're reward-based, and they are habits. Your intentional self, the one who wants to make different choices, lives in System 2, right? Lives in that prefrontal cortex. She or he is the voice that says, I want to feel better tomorrow. I don't need this tonight. But that voice often requires energy and awareness to activate. And it often shows up just a little bit too late, right? And this is exactly why you can want to drink less and still find yourself drinking the same amount that you always have been. Your System 1 is operating on old programming. It's not about willpower or self-control. It's about that lower brain just being, who's driving the bus, basically. Kahneman's work helps us see that much of what we call habit or personality is just System 1 thinking on autopilot. And last week's labels that we talked about, the fun one, the beer guy, the wine lover, those are all stored shortcuts. And they help the brain decide quickly who we are and what we do. Basically, automatically going into System 1. The good news is that System 2 actually can intervene, and we are capable of overriding System 1. It just takes practice, repetition, and awareness to do it so that before, System 1 has a chance to complete the loop, right? Let's connect this all to what is happening actually biologically inside the brain. As I said, System 1, it lives largely in the limbic system. That is the lower part, the more primitive part of the brain, the emotional center of the brain. It's where the amygdala processes fear and comfort, where the basal ganglia manages habits and routines, and where the nucleus accumbens drives reward-seeking behavior. And it's what lights up when you anticipate a glass of wine, a beer, or, whatever drink of choice when you've developed a habit pattern around alcohol. And System 2, as I mentioned, operates mainly in the prefrontal cortex. That is the most recently evolved part of the brain, still millions of years ago, but it is our newest and biggest part, the part of the brain that humans went on to develop a larger prefrontal cortex. It's why we have the ability to cognate, as I've said before. And that's where reasoning, planning, and impulse control live. When you say, I'm not drinking tonight, that is your prefrontal cortex taking the reins, and it is making a choice that aligns with your long-term goals. But the limbic system doesn't always listen, right? It's faster, it's older, and it is more emotionally charged. And when these two systems send conflicting messages like, I want to drink versus I said I wouldn't, you are going to feel that internal tension. And that is completely normal. It is not moral failure. It is literally neural competition. And this is the key. The prefrontal cortex can strengthen its influence through that beautiful thing we talk about so often, neuroplasticity. It is the brain's ability to change and rewire itself through experience and repetition. Every time you pause before reaching for a drink, every time you make a conscious choice not to respond to an urge, even when you just notice your urge, you are firing neurons in the prefrontal cortex and building stronger communication between the intentional self and the automatic one. Over time, those small, deliberate decisions create new pathways that compete with the old drinking loop. The more often you repeat the new ones, the more efficient they become. And just like your old habits became automatic, so can your new ones. I talk about that all the time. Really, everything I talk about is just a matter of continued practice. That's why I tell people the only way you cannot succeed is if you just quit trying. Hey, it's Molly, here to talk to you about Sunnyside. If you've listened to this show for any length of time, you know that Sunnyside is my number one recommendation for drinking apps that help you change your relationship with alcohol. I've been a Sunnyside partner for more than 3 years now, and one of the key reasons that I chose Sunnyside to be my app of choice is that they are really focused on continuous improvement, just like me. And for you, it is continuous improvement of the app in terms of how the customer is experiencing it. They've completely redesigned the progress tab from the ground up, which makes it easier for you to see your progress over time. They've introduced mini infographics to help you better see the big picture of drinks reduced and how dry days have added up since you joined Sunnyside. They have a dry day streak tracker now for those of you that are focused on taking a real extended break from drinking. And they intelligently surface trends in your data to highlight any positive things for you, and like a steady decrease in overall drinks over the course of time. These changes and these improvements are something that Sunnyside has continued to do ever since I started working with them. You can check it out over at sunnyside.co/Molly and get started on a 15-day free trial today. You've heard me say this before. System 1, it's that well-worn superhighway, fast, direct, and easy to take without thinking. System 2, it's the dirt road that you're building alongside of it. It's slower at first, but every time you travel it, it becomes shorter and easier to follow. Eventually, with enough practice, that dirt road becomes the new superhighway. And there's one more piece of brain science that explains why this feels hard at first, and that's because your prefrontal cortex gets tired. Research shows that decision fatigue, stress, lack of sleep, all reduce the prefrontal cortex's ability to regulate impulses. And that's why cravings feel stronger in the evening or after a hard day. That's not a weakness, it's just biology. And that's also why awareness and creating a doable drink plan ahead of time matter. We're going to take the decision out of the moment. We're going to move it into the earlier part of the day or the week, because when you decide ahead of time, you don't have to ask your prefrontal cortex to make that decision in the moment. You're deciding before the limbic system takes over. And you create just enough space, if you do this ahead of time, between the urge and the action for your slower, wiser self to weigh in. When you already have a doable drink plan in place, that is going to help you create space in that reaction, because you're going to remember that's going to come up. It is in your brain. So how do you strengthen the intentional self, the other you who doesn't drink? How do you, practice that person? First, pause to plan. Before you take a drink, take 10 seconds to pause and ask, what do I expect this drink to do for me? That question alone forces your brain into system 2, or intentional thinking. The act of slowing down interrupts that automatic response. So if you do nothing else, every time after you pour a drink, pause for 10 seconds and ask yourself, what do I expect this drink to do for me? Even if you still choose to drink, you have practiced awareness. And awareness is the very first step to change. You hear me say it. We cannot change what we cannot see. Number 2, I want you to rehearse your future self. Neuroscience shows that mental rehearsal, visualizing yourself making a different choice, activates the same neural pathways as doing it in real life. Picture yourself in the moment you usually drink at dinner, after work, at a party, and see yourself pausing, see yourself taking a breath, maybe see yourself choosing something different. Your brain treats that as practice, and it strengthens the new neural route. Number 3, reinforce what you're doing with evidence. After an intentional choice, no matter how small, acknowledge it. We got to celebrate small wins. Say it out loud, write it down. That's me practicing the other version of myself. That reflection activates the prefrontal cortex and helps solidify the learning loop. So say, that's just me practicing the other version of myself. That's just me being an alcohol minimalist. Number 4, definitely work on reducing decision fatigue. Since we know that the prefrontal cortex can get tired, make fewer in the moment decisions. Plan those, make that doable drink plan, make your alcohol-free days planned ahead of time. And the more you automate your intentional choices, the less room there is for system 1 to try to hijack the moment. Remember, you're not erasing your default self. You are literally retraining her or him. You're teaching yourself that peace and pleasure can exist without alcohol. If last week's episode was about rewriting your story, your narrative, those labels that shape our default identity, then this week is about understanding how those stories live in the brain. The you who drinks is not all of you. That's a pattern. It's a collection of fast, emotional, habitual circuits doing their job. The you who doesn't drink is just as real. That's the slower, more intentional system that sees beyond tonight and acts in alignment with tomorrow. When you feel like you're two people, remember, you're simply experiencing your brain at work. One system seeks comfort, the other seeks growth. The work of changing your relationship with alcohol is not about silencing one side, it's about strengthening the other. Through repetition, through reflection, through awareness, through intentionality, you become stronger. And those thoughts then become faster and more automatic. And one day, the person that you've been trying to become actually is your default. So I hope that you're enjoying this kind of conversation about who you are without the drink in your hand, or exploring both the sides of it and the idea of not being an identity or a label. We're going to keep going with this kind of idea, but next week I'm actually going to take a break from this this whole theme to share with you an important update from Sunnyside. So look forward to that coming next week. And then the following week, we're going to go back to this idea of who are you without a drink. And we're going to talk about celebration and how to experience joy, connection, and reward without alcohol, and how to train your brain to look for pleasure in new and sustainable ways. That's what's coming in the weeks ahead. And until then, take care of your intentional self. He or she is already learning how to lead. I will see you all on Thursday. And until then, choose peace, my friends. Thanks for listening to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. Take something you learned from this week's episode and put it into action. Changing your drinking habits and creating a peaceful relationship with alcohol is 100% possible. You can stop worrying, stop feeling guilty about overdrinking, and become someone who desires alcohol less. I work with people in 2 different ways, and you can learn about them over at my website. Go to www.mollywatts.com/workwithme or reach out to me directly. Shoot me an email, molly@mollywatts.com. We'll jump on a call and decide what might work best for you. This podcast is really just the beginning of our conversation. Let's keep it going. If there's one thing I know, it's that change is way easier when you stop trying to do it alone.